Hi everyone, my name is Roseanna and this video is going to be on handling difficult conversations. So it's going to be in the form of a Pecha Kucha, so it's only going to be 20 seconds on each slide. It's hopefully going to be some real bite-sized tips. If you want to have a conversation about anything discussed, then you can take it offline. So the purpose of this is just to talk through what makes a conversation difficult and some tips for handling them. So it's not a step-by-step guide, it's just a collection of tips and suggestions for having difficult and crucial conversations to help improve them. So first thing is what makes a conversation difficult. So you can think about difficult conversations in three ways. So one, there may be high stakes and change involved. Two, there might be increased emotions. And three, there may be opposing opinions. There also might be, particularly at work, relationships that can blur. So this might be a colleague and a friend, a colleague and a family member. So it's really important just to notice what the complexity of that relationship is and anticipate why it might be difficult. So the first tip that we're going to cover is knowing your goal. So this is about being really clear on what you want to get out of the situation, hone in on the heart of the problem so that the conversation doesn't get off track. And really this is about being able to articulate the goal clearly to the other person as well. A second tip is just to notice what emotions you have about having the conversation. So you might have negative emotions, so just notice what they are and ground yourself before having the conversation. So you can just sort of use breathing techniques, but really this is about noticing what your negative emotions are. Remain focused. So there may be times when you notice that you're going off track, and just remember what your goal is and come back to that. If you notice the other person taking it off track, then a really good phrase to use is, that may be true, but I'm here to talk to you about X. So that acknowledges the person's point, but it also allows you to get back on track if you've lost focus. This point is about addressing things quickly. So you might hate conflict and you might have been putting it off for a while, but really this is about having the conversation as soon as you realise there's a conversation that needs to be had. And so when this happens, just set up the meeting and address it head on. It's also important to think about where and when you have the conversation. So it's all about the environment. So find a neutral place that normally works best, and think about whether it's better to have the conversation face to face, with a table in between you. Should you be next to each other? That's circumstance dependent, but ultimately it's about finding somewhere that you both feel comfortable. Get in the right mindset. So this is about going in with a positive and open mindset. So if you don't feel like you're in a positive or open mindset, you should think about how you're going to ground yourself, and maybe step out of the thinking and into a more calmer space to allow you to listen and also be able to better express what you're trying to say. There's a great meditation on the Headspace app around having difficult conversations, which is a really good 3-minute meditation to get your mindset in check. Ask permission. So after you've clearly articulated what your goal is, it is always just worth checking with the other person if it's okay to have that conversation. So just as you've come into this conversation with a good mindset, they might want to have some time to do the same, and other factors might mean that they're just not in the right mindset at that time. So always ask permission to have the conversation. Get to your facts first. So it's really important to just work out what's fact and what's opinion, and try not to blur what your opinion is as coming across as fact. So just start with what the facts are and then share what your opinion is. You then also need to understand what the other person's perspective, so ask for what that is. So you don't need to be talking the whole time, and listening helps you see things from their point of view. They might not be forthcoming, so just ask questions to help gain more understanding, and just be clear that your intention is to ask questions so that you understand where they're coming from. Ultimately, finding common ground is really good to reduce any tension and help you come up with positive solutions to the way forward. Finding what you do agree on, particularly if there are opposing opinions, finding what you agree on first, and it might be more than you think, will be a really helpful starting point. Notice their defensive triggers. So if somebody's getting defensive, then that's probably not going to help the conversation move forward. So learn to look for their reactions and check in on them. The best advice here is just to simply address the ploy openly and sincerely. You might also have thought beforehand about how they might react and steer clear in the conversation of those trigger points. Be okay with silence. So don't rush to fill silence with words. There will be moments in the conversation where silence does occur, and this space allows for thinking and reflection time, and it will allow the other person to think about what they want to say. So silence is good, so don't just rush to fill it. And a difficult conversation here shouldn't be about having time just to share your grievances, so it needs to be constructive, and a really good way of taking it forward into what can we do differently is actually thinking about what's the shared problem solving, what can you both do to help, and perhaps come with ideas already to the conversation about here's what I'm prepared to do, here's what you could do. Ultimately, it's about finding what the other person is willing to do. They might feel that they've already tried it or that's never going to work, and you can just acknowledge that thought, but still ask for willingness anyway. So I know that you don't think this is going to work, but are you willing to try? It's a really nice way of trying to encourage that shared problem solving. And then once you get to the end, and you might have only found small wins and small solutions, but as you get to the end of the conversation, make sure to summarize what's been said by writing it down. So, state at the end of the conversation what's been said, what you've agreed on, and what's next, and agree a review point. And it's also good just to write things down so that it's really clear what's been said. So that's the end of my tips on having difficult conversations. It's been quite a quick video, so if any of you want to continue the conversation offline, then here are all my contact details, and I would be very happy to have a conversation with you and talk about it further. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and take care.